I hit the button. Yes, inmendham video. So sort of a shout out video to another inmendham video. Uh, yeah, I don't know about this image. But anyway, I haven't photographed very well lately. I have to work on better camera angles and such. But anyway, yeah, whatever. Like it's important. Not. But anyway, so yeah, there's a pretty good interview. Um, uh, there's context to everything. I hadn't had power for 6 days, and I had just gotten my electricity back a few hours before the video, and yeah, I was a little bit impatient and not much of a mood. But sometimes that's a good idea. A little more direct and get to it already. Impatience is sometimes a good thing. Um, yeah, so I think it was a good idea overall. Obviously, to have what conversations you can with people. Um, Still sort of interested in having a conversation with somebody who I disagree with more than agree, and to somehow accomplish that in some sort of diplomatically civil way and all that kind of crap. I was thinking of Anika Skywalker. She's obviously a girl, still all that kind of crap, but the force is strong in that one kind of thing. She sort of is it's a good metaphor for her in a way, because she's just totally misguided in terms of the dark force and all that kind of stuff, and it's not bringing balance. um, and but articulate and the standard kind of model of the evil citizen, in the sense that they can sound like they're reasonable when they're really not at all. Anyway, so it's something in my head that sort of needs to be done. Um, and yeah, I don't know how to. So anyway, so I'll talk a little bit about subjects that she talks about, like Bitcoin. That comes up, you see it, although here and there. So the modern mystic. So, well, I should say more about the Humpty Dumpty tribe guy. I don't really like the name, but that's just a thing for me. It's a bad metaphor, I think. The idea that people who have fallen out of civilization, so to speak, are the broken ones. But yeah, your power is in the game. We've got to fix the game from inside the game. I've sort of made this point before about politics. You just can't walk away and say, "Oh, it's broken. I'm not going to vote. I'm not going to participate." You have to play with whatever weapons we have, whatever strings you can pull. There's no point in cutting the strings, because you need them eventually. Somebody's, a little tug here, a little tug there. Those tugs might be very important in the future, and so we've all got to stay as connected as we can to, not being too far outside. So you got to be outside enough to keep your sanity, but the smart game, the witty game, is to stay capable of doing, and not to make yourself impotent. When the time comes, you want to be ready to do your little humping Dumpty part. So yeah, so yeah, I think yes. So yeah, I don't know if there's anything else to say, specific to what I said in the video. It's just this general idea of trying to explain to people that as people we're deluded into playing role-playing, into kind of pantomiming through our lives. You pick up these habits from your traditional culture and your traditional style parents. Even if they're not traditional, it becomes your tradition, some sort of family tradition of behaviors and attitudes and definitions of good and bad smells and all of that kind of stuff, and you have to judge all of those things that are, every prejudice and bias that's inside of you, and see if it's made out of something legitimate or illegitimate, and you see if the weight and the proportions are in the right place, and all of that kind of crap. And yeah, so there's a lot to being just saying I am anti is just not enough, because you have to be reasonable. There's no point in being anti if you're not going to be effective at fixing things that are broken. So this whole idea that you can identify something broken, but if you can't do anything to fix it or minimize its impact, then there's no point in recognizing it, kind of thing. There's no value to being outside of the maze and looking at the maze if through all that observation you can't figure out a few things you can do to change the process, to change the course, to change the usual function, and yeah, and so it gets complicated. And I know I'm backseat driving my own behavior, in the sense of there's certain things I recognize about my often obnoxious, intolerant, quick-triggered, angry response is often unproductive. Sometimes, I can see that there are times when maybe it's useful, and then times when it's not, and that I may not have played all of my cards in any way, the best way I could have, and there may be lots of corrections I could have made. If I could go back and fix, I would fix, but yeah, there's always this stinky little slimy butt. But it's not my fault. It's like you just want to give yourself some latitude, and not feel like a complete dirtbag. So you make excuses, and I probably shouldn't do that. But I think we all need, to some extent, to make an excuse for the fact that we are not all that we should be, and we don't do all that we should do, and we get caught up in eating cookies or something, this selfish crap. I just don't want to sound like I'm defending that, when I sort of am, in the sense that you have to make some concessions to the fact that you're human, and you still have to have an environment you can live in. You have to create some sort of artificial zoo environment, and we are kind of delicate organisms, and we need certain things in our environment, or we get all depressed, or we start pacing back and forth, or we start going wacky and all that kind of stuff. So just like animals in captive, detached from any kind of world they can understand, they go bonkers. We're just as vulnerable as people Humpty Dumptying are, realizing we're swimming in shit, and it's kind of a horrible realization. Anyway, it's not sort of enough. It's always little things, little comments here and there. I mean, somebody commented on the dream thing, I remember, in the last video, and made some comment like, well, even the animals know that once the dream is over, it's over. But that's like saying that, any trauma you have doesn't create a conditioning, and of course it does. So, whether whether even an animal would be capable of saying, I mean, obviously it'd be capable of saying, oh, I didn't catch fire and I didn't, you know, spin in circles and fall off a cliff. Yeah, they could obviously say, well, that must not have happened somehow, or I'm all better now. I must have slept it off. It doesn't mean it hasn't traumatized them as a real fear event. It's like I've had dreams of, you know, giant beasties outside the house in the past, like maybe 10 years ago. It's like for a whole year there was always lions and tigers outside of my house for some reason, and it did make me kind of conscious of, well, you know, rabid dogs or, you know, rabid foxes in the woods or something. I mean, it did make me aware of things I wouldn't have paid any attention to as threats. So it does affect you, whether you like it or not. It seems quite obvious, but again, these people just, we're always trying to undo, you know, any knot. You spend all this time explaining how this knot will do the job, and it's always people undoing it. You set traps, and there's people always just, you know, springing the traps for no good reason. Whatever the metaphor would be. You know, you pave the road, and then they just, you know, while it's still, before it sets, they walk in the concrete or something. Yeah, okay, enough of that. Alright, so the modern mystic said two things. I mean, he's really, you know, he's just so, he's it's just become so useless as a thinker, because it's so superficial. Now, he's always had a problem understanding something like wasted work. Just doesn't, he just doesn't kind of understand that if you really take an overview of the world, what are you really trying to do is you're trying to get productivity out of people. And he sort of understands it on the poor people end, that, oh yes, we're just squeezing value out of them and getting more work out of them, and well, that's sort of a positive thing in a way. But he sees no obligation on the other end, you know, the rich people end, for any of their behavior, to have any social, to make any contribution. I mean, you could certainly understand the waste if we paid people to just, you know, walk around their house or something. You know, something that did absolutely no good, no function, no value. Something really stupid, bureaucratic paperwork. You know, one guy just makes a piece of paper, hands it to the other guy puts a stamp on it and hands it back to him, and, you know, it doesn't accomplish anything. They just stamp a piece of paper. And understand how this is, you know, socially wasteful and destructive. I suppose he could understand that, but he certainly can't understand it if the person's a CEO or you know, some sort of rich asshole. He thinks they're doing something incredibly valuable because, look, the system's not on fire from his perspective. He can't see the flames. So in this video he said something really silly like, well, first he says how the system works, which is idiotic, you know, and somehow the rich they've squeezed the rich all they can. There's nothing more they can't get any more blood out of that poor stone, and it's such a bizarre statement in the context of what's happened over the last 50 years, where the rich have gotten richer and richer and richer, and have technically at no point in human history been richer. I mean, there are richer. The top 0.01% are richer than the richest emperors ever were, in terms of the consolidation of wealth in the so few hands. Even the old British king system and nobles, and it spread the ownership among all of those nobles. You know, what are they called? Some other word for the landowners. So at least it was spread out among some population, and you know, statistically, it's even worse than that now. So we've done even worse than monarchy, you know, which is, you know, pretty hard to do worse than that, and we've accomplished it. You know, and you know, he doesn't see it. That's not a problem. That somehow isn't just taking a ton of resources and what they have the power to do and having it wasted by people who have silly ambitions and frivolously create wasted labor. I mean, take all the labor serving these rich landlords and their silly needs, their Lamborghini horninesses, and there's no social value in it. There's no Hoover Dams built. So it's sort of related to like the Chinese are thinking about building one of these silly accelerators, and you know, it's hugely expensive and all that kind of stuff. And you know, I was thinking about it just in terms of just what a preposterous waste this is. You know, they'll gain no value out of it in any practical sense. They might get a few headlines in the newspaper, and I'm trying to think of how this exactly is to their advantage. Now, they do get some scientists to come to their country, but I don't know if they're very good scientists. Now, just the engineering part might be valuable. You get a bunch of engineers from around the world coming to build the thing, and you know, having them hang around and do other things might be worth it. But it's hard to find any real value in this thing. It's just such a white elephant. It's not even a good way to describe it. It's a big pile of white elephant poo. I mean, it's not a. It's just something that's going to go septic and stink. When they could take all those resources and do one of their dam projects or something and create tons of electricity for free, kind of almost free. You know, they could do something that would give their whole social infrastructure, feed it and create you know, extra value added. That would be huge, and it's just such an insane waste of money. So anyway, that's just a side subject. So yeah, so there was a link to some video, I think, on one of the Anika, I don't know, maybe it was just a related video on Bitcoin, and some Indian guy, I guess, who has something, who made big money on it somewhere. And you know, it's just such a racket, and people are so, you know, they think that this is some kind of for the people thing, and you know, that somehow this mechanism is, somehow it does something socially valuable, when it's just you know, it's worse than drugs in a way. This idea of fake mining of plastic gold. I mean, it's retarded to think this will do anything or can do anything, because the whole mindset is backwards. It's more of this stuff where people want to get rich quick and without doing anything valuable. They want to get rich for wearing a striped sweater. You know, just not doing anything that has value. And that's all these things is. It's just very popular among people who are probably gamblers and people who think that's the way. Hey, that's a good way to make a living, is to, you know, go to Las Vegas and see if you can steal some sucker's money and let the house make a huge profit on the side. So you can basically, you know, rob somebody, share some of it with the silly owners of the silly shiny institution with all the flashing lights and all that shit, all that waste, all the seductive bullshit that goes with it, the liquor, the whole thing, and you're just completely, you know, essentially murdering the suckers, and drinking their blood, you know, and sharing it with the, you know, the king vampires, and thinking yourself a productive citizen. You know, I did good work. And that's all this silly thing is. It's not going to replace cash. It's not going to, because it doesn't do what cash needs to do, which is lose value, not gain value. You don't want people, I've said this stuff, it's kind of obvious. You don't want people to hoard cash. You don't want people to hoard the thing you're trying to use as transaction currency, because that's just going to create huge problems in terms of its value is going to bubble and then deflate. And if you don't want to be one of the suckers who, you know, holds the cash for something you've got to make a purchase, and the next day all of a sudden it's only worth half of what it was when you bought it, and you just wanted to use it to buy stuff to do as transaction currency. I mean, the whole point of cash is that it have dependable value over time, that it always buys five, you know, a dollar always buys 5 sheep or something close to it. And if it do, like I said, it has to, in a sense, degrade in value a little bit just to keep people from holding it like a commodity. And so all these bitcoins, they all make them as if they're something worthy of hoarding. They're not for transactioning. They're clearly just for creating a sucker. You know, buy low, sell high to the sucker, and make your money by forcing somebody else to lose money. And people think this is productive industry. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm making people poor, and it's fun. And it's just psychological, stupid. It's stupid psychology, and it's stupid as a practical thing. It has no practical value. So the idea of having an electronic bank is perfectly rational. The idea that you can do it in some, you know, whatever you, the distributed way, and therefore guarantee something, I don't see how it guarantees you any more security than any other system, because anybody can, the distributed system can be in some sense outed just as much as a regular bank in terms of identifying who held the assets and who sold the assets. And I mean, as a record, it's still going to leave evidence of, you know, and that's the other part of it. It's like everybody wants to be part of some private economy. And why do people want to do that? Oh, because they want to cheat, you know, and not get caught. They want to troll the economic system, and so they need an anonymous identity to do that. I mean, and you know, so that almost leads into another subject that's kind of interesting, I think, is the fact that so many people think that's the world they want, is this underworld, you know, where they think it's healthier for people to be to not be accountable, to be able to hide, to be able to cheat. These are, in my opinion, all very negative things, and that the more, what we'd really want are people who are perfectly comfortable having to account for their life and defend it, and not get away with cheating on their wives and you know, risking this or taking advantage of that and all of that kind of crap. That they can live, you know, play a good game by the real rules, instead of playing this, let's turn the lights down low, you know, for the event, so nobody can see what really happens, you know, so you can trip the other guy, do some other bullshit, you know, punch him, you know, brass knuckles, a little jab here and there, and pretend you won a good game. And it's like, I think those are the kind of people you want to make. You want to make a world where people are perfectly comfortable being accountable and playing a good game, rather than people trying to find rationalizations and excuses for playing a dirty game, you know, of you know, catch me if you can kind of bullshit, you know, being proud of getting away with it. It's, yeah, it's just another reason why to, you know, to say that's, you know, people suck, is that all of this energy goes into these gimmicks and these shams, and they all, like I said, they talk about it like it's some sort of honorable, this is what entrepreneurs do, you know, is come up with some racket to screw people out of their money, to do as little as possible and get as much as possible for it. And people think that's playing a good game, you know, fucking the civilization. So you could look at it a lot of ways. I mean, that's, you know, you can bend that into immigration policy, and the fact that people are just thinking in this such a small-minded way, like, oh, we need to increase the population so there's people to pay into Social Security, and oh, it doesn't matter how meager and awful their life is. It doesn't matter that they're all religious kooks. You know, it doesn't matter that most of them can't afford the children they produce, afford to pay for them, and that you have to raise them because they don't have time to raise them because they're all working too hard. You know, they don't have no time to raise their own kids, so you have to do it as a society. It's just so idiotic and unproductive and counterproductive to the civilization you're trying to create. And You know, it's just like the deficit spending thing is just so obvious. I mean, it's obvious generational theft. Can't be seen as anything other than that. It's you know, huge liabilities dumped on somebody else while you enjoy the huge benefits of the free money. I mean, it's credit card spending and then putting the credit card in your kid's pocket. I mean, you know, that's almost an offense. Some of you might agree you'd want to shoot parents that fucking idiotic. A parent who did that to their kids, you know. You know, got an American Express card and put 40 grand on it and then shoved it in their kid's pocket as a liability. You'd almost say, shoot that fucker. It's so bad. And yet this is routine, traditional practice. You know, so perfectly acceptable. Yeah, it's just, no, it's perfectly unacceptable. So I don't know if there's any point in making distinctions between these gimmicky money tricks and this idea of distributed networks, because they're trying to do that now. They're trying to make it look like it's some sort of cleaner business than it is, by talking about these things like they're separate. You know, like distributed networks are somehow worthy of something. And they're completely unnecessary if you have something called like a not-for-profit open source business or something. You know, a bank that has an infrastructure that's fundamentally accountable. You know, where the books are publicly available for inspection, kind of thing. And there's no threat. You know, and you know, where the systems that it's run on are understood and known to be what they are. Inspectable, let's just say, where it's all open to public inspection. Short the idea of, you know, stealing everybody's Social Security numbers, but you know, it always is going to have to come down to that. So that's where this whole distributed networks still have to connect to some accountable network somewhere. They still have to be able to go you know, be something that can be reliably integrated into regular commerce in some sort of reliable way where people can depend on value. And you're not going to do that by creating another commodity that can be hoarded, bought and sold, bubbled, and manipulated. And it's going to be manipulated by the very people these people think they're escaping, which is these capitalist legacy owners of our economic system. This is just another place for those people to game you in the end. Because they'll think they're winning now, but it'll become more obvious later that they're not winning. They're guaranteed to lose, because the players that have the leverage are the ones who are going to win. Yeah, the institutional leverage. That's probably just doing too complex a concept. Anyway, too obscure a pile of words. But anyway, I think that's probably enough. I mean, Bitcoin Cash CEO. We won't need banks anymore. You know, like I said, these are all people who are making money, you know, off of this gimmick. So of course they're saying all the wonderful things you won't need anymore, when it's complete bullshit. And they're just selling people garbage, and they're making big money off of it. And people think, well, like, you know, you can sort of compare it to, these people are just like the religious, you know, people who make a ton of money, you know, crying into the camera and saying, I feel your pain, and blah, 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 you know, and all this crap, and they're just you know, completely stealing from their congregations, the people they're supposed to love and care for, and they're just raping them, and the suckers fall for it. You know, it's such an amazingly stupid thing to fall for. You're just saying, how can people fall for that? You know, I mean, the religion is so stupid in the first place, but some idea that if you make your minister rich, that somehow you're going to get rich, when the only way he got rich was you gave him your hard-earned money for doing nothing? I don't know. Well, anyway, so I guess we'll call it a video. Mostly trying some new technology. These microphone issues are pissing me off. As I've stated, I said eventually I'll be doing some Linux videos because I have become accustomed to using it and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's a little tricky getting sometimes these drivers to do what you need them to do in terms of being able to reliably, dependably, each time you turn the computer on, having it do the same thing. Well, that's not so much the problem. It's I don't know how the errors are just up. There's no real, you can't know until it happens, and you can't, once it happens, it doesn't tell you anything about exactly what the conflict is or the problem that's creating some sort of obnoxious, horrible noise or some other kind of crap. So it's something you can deal with, but I mean, it'd be really nice if you didn't have to deal with it. I guess that's, what I'm saying, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, I probably should put the Humpty Dumpty video. Where the hell did I do with it? Hello? Humpty? Hello? Those comments. Comments are irritating. There it is. Okay. So, yeah, I think that's it. It's probably enough. He's almost at 5,000 subscribers, so it'd be good if you could, a couple of people could subscribe, and, it used to be, I could get, I'd point to something and, they'd get a couple hundred subscribers, no problem. Just doesn't happen anymore. Anyway, but I'm really not doing the tribe thing, right? Kind of obviously, I'm really not doing the tribe thing. So, the comments are generally pretty good, so that's good to see. Anyway, till next time, and such. Yeah, I think so. I think that's all.